Do your end users always, and I mean always, without exception, work on company-owned devices and IT-approved apps? I didn't think so. So my next question is, how do you keep your company's data safe when it's sitting on all those unmanaged apps and devices? 1Password has an answer to this question: Extended Access Management. 1Password Extended Access Management helps you secure every sign-in for every app on every device because it solves the problems traditional IAM and MDM can't touch. Check it out at securityweekly.com/1password. Welcome back to Enterprise Security Weekly. Now for the Enterprise Security Weekly news. You can check out securityweekly.com/ESW398 if you want to follow along as we go through the news, or for links to the articles that we're covering. I've got some comments in the news items this week. Trying to keep the number down. I'm down to 9, and then Eamon's got 2. So we're going to try and get through this in 30 minutes. Trying to get this news segment down to more bite size, more palatable length. Palatable length. And almost 400. 2 episodes away from 400.
Ooh,
398.
That's awesome.
I think my first one, I took over this podcast around 200. I don't know if it was exactly 200, but it was pretty close. So it's a milestone for me.
It's
a
nice
lot
work.
of episodes.
Yeah, that's awesome. And you haven't gotten fired yet, so you must be doing something right.
Yep. Yeah, I'm trying. I'm definitely trying. I'm putting in the work. I was up till 3 a.m. prepping for this week.
Yeah. Now, I have to say that I don't think many people probably know how much time and effort you put into this. I just get to show up and look good and sound smart. But yeah, anybody who doesn't know, Adrian dedicates a decent chunk of his time to this. So it's much appreciated.
Yeah. Kudos to Adrian.
Finding good guests, also finding good co-hosts. It's a lot of work.
Absolutely.
All right. Let's kick off with some funding here. Jackie, you know who this company is better than I do. I cringed a little bit at the title here. So Krogel, armed with $30 million, takes to wrap off a new AI Iron Man suit for security analysts. So,
didn't we just come from an event with an Iron Man suit?
We did. We did. The CEO of
Brett Locker,
but that was pretty cool. It wasn't a metaphor. He has an actual functioning with servos built in and lights built in Iron Man suit. So that was pretty cool.
It made for one of the better conference parties I've been to. We had a lot of fun. So, Krogel, I assume is
that
their
was
name.
Threat Locker, by the way, for
Threat
people
Locker.
listening.
Yes, sorry, Threat Locker.
Threat Locker's Zero Trust World Conference. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, good food too. Krogel. It's interesting, right? So they say they're an autonomous assistant for cybersecurity research.
Did you say Cribble? I'm sorry.
Krogel.
Are you sure? I heard Cribble.
Did I say Cribble? No. Cribble is my former employer. Krogel is also a handful of ex-Splunkers. So Cribble was 3 ex-Splunkers. I think this is kind of a typical thing that happens when a software gets too big and wily to do all the things. These little spin-offs of these subject matter experts from the companies kind of form their own, why the hell isn't it easier to do that? And then this is the bleh.
Yeah.
But this bleh is an Iron Man suit.
And they can't convince them to do it internally. So they're like, well, we're just going to leave and go do it anyway. Or sometimes I think this is calculated. Sometimes I think I have no idea in this case. I don't know, Splunk and Cisco that well. I do know Cisco has done this in the past where they say, hey, go off, build this company. We will fund you. Cisco has its own ventures arm, and then we will acquire you if things go well down the road. So that sometimes happens too.
Yeah. Well, they have Menlo Ventures is who led the round, which is a very high profile investor. So I would assume that they've got ins places. But I should be meeting with them soon. So I'm looking forward to that in my analyst role. It's exciting to see, some of these tools that are kind of aimed at doing the treachery, the drudgery of security, like
Yeah.
triaging alerts and
No.
adding context to alerts.
Anytime I see AI paired with, there's just this, drudgery that needs to be done. I'm like, yes, that is the perfect use case for it. That's what it should be doing. Stuff that humans hate to do that's not too difficult, but is monotonous, repetitive. So they describe it as an autonomous assistant that helps security researchers analyze daily network alerts to find and fix security incidents. I feel like the term autonomous is getting somewhat abused lately. Um, like we hear agentic AI referred to as autonomous a lot of times, but really all it's doing is you said plan a picnic for me, and it broke that down into 8 separate prompts, and then
Right.
it's doing a summary at the end. So yeah, I guess that was autonomous, but that's not. I don't think that's what anybody thinks when they think autonomous.
I'm not going to go down the rabbit hole of the difference between layers of binary and quantum, but yeah, it's really interesting too, because we've had automation in the enterprise for forever, right? There are all these Zapier and all these other tools that are intended to make it easier to automate things, but we went from automated to autonomous because that sounds way cooler and that sounds like something
Yeah.
that your hey pewter could do, right?
Yeah, and I don't ever see generative AI being trustworthy enough to be fully autonomous. Like it goes off and does stuff for days without anybody checking in on it or checking its work. Uh, that just doesn't seem possible at this point. So, yeah, automation and autonomous. Sure, generative AI can be part of the tool chain in doing something that you can legitimately call automation or autonomous. But not the whole thing on its own. I just don't see that yet.
We probably need some sort of like grading system, like, how autonomous, like,
Like different levels, like with the
yeah.
driving cars.
Like with
Yeah.
driving, it's
Self-driving.
like, okay, like this is kind of like the calling the BS factor, so it's like autonomous and BS factor all aligned.
You
Yeah,
also have to
autonomous
match
with a
it to-
babysitter would be like level X.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think I mentioned before, I always give it the intern rule. Like, don't give AI anything to do that you wouldn't give a pretty inexperienced intern. And
Yeah.
so I think part of the issue is that we're looking at, if you think about intelligence or capability as a standard distribution, we're trying to replace the stuff that's at the right side of the bell curve. When it's like, if we could just get like, if my Dunkins could be consistent, that would be great. Like, let's replace Dunkins at workers with autonomous coffee
Oh my
machines,
goodness.
right? Like,
Hey,
I-
it's
these
pretty
are-
consistent in New York. I don't know, but
I went 6 months once and didn't get the correct. Like it was always something like egg was missing from the breakfast sandwich. You just gave me a croissant with
Wow.
ham and cheese. Like it now it's a lunch sandwich. It's not a breakfast sandwich anymore because you left the egg off.
Yeah, and I think so. If you think about what those jobs are meant to do, and our economy's a little effed right now, but in general, those types of jobs are meant to be entry level jobs for high schoolers, people new to working, to learn how to work. Those people can probably be replaced with AI because we're not expecting anything other than basic decision making, right? We're not expecting, and it's a scenario that doesn't change over time. With security, not only is security like you're fighting humans, so they're doing unpredictable things, but also every single day security changes. And so you not only need agents that can help with unpredictable things, you also need agents that are constantly out there learning and prioritizing learning. And it's just the cost of all of that compute doesn't seem like in the next conceivable few years that's going to outweigh just having a room full of analysts.
Good point.
I do wish
So we've also
I could get a good
we've also
Starbucks.
got Gnostic Labs raised $11 million. We had Sunil Yu on this podcast during Black Hat last year because they won the Black Hat's equivalent of the innovation.
It's not the sandbox, but it's yeah.
Yeah, similar to the sandbox. I'm trying to remember the names here, but yeah, and it's much smaller. I think it's only 4 startups instead of 10 that are competing for the top title, and I think they won that one. So Interesting. I'm kind of waiting to see what they do with it, and really interested to see what they build there. It's a very ambitious thing that they're building with Gnostic. I won't say much more than that because you can go back and find that episode. Just look for Enterprise Security Weekly and So Neil You or Gnostic, and you'll find that episode. But good to see them hit the Series A mark. The next one here, so this is security funded, where like a lot of the funding information comes from Mike Privet's security funded newsletter. But he does a vibe check every week, and the reason I put this here is for the results of last week's vibe check, which asks whether you're a security leader, product builder, or investor, what's holding AI back in cybersecurity? And the top answer is vendors struggle to make it fit into real workflows. And then tied for second is security leaders and practitioners don't trust it to make decisions. And the other tie is buyers aren't convinced that AI actually helps. So in other words, solution looking for a problem, right? So I thought that was those are some interesting results there.
I don't know if sellers are convinced that AI actually helps.
They know it raises money.
Yeah.
They know that much.
Yep.
Yeah, I feel like we might have covered a news story pretty recently where large enterprises are like, yep, we're not really realizing any enterprise value from this. It's fine.
Even Microsoft's own studies that it releases on it, they're like, yeah, and Satya Nadella said, like, look, it's not moving the needle for us. Like our revenue is not seeing any benefits from AI. And
it is
yeah, I don't think that
critical thinking skills though. So there's that.
yeah, but those cats, Jackie,
Ooh.
making food in a McDonald's, that video was super cute. And now I have to include it in the show notes because I mentioned it.
Well, we've gotten some viewer feedback about my opinions on AI's impact on the environment, and then I saw this video that was AI generated today, and I was like, I don't care how many lakes we dried up, that's worth it. Use as many gigawatts of electricity as you can. I just want to see more cats making McDonald's.
That needs to be a whole series of cats working in human jobs, doing like entry level human jobs. It's hilarious.
I want to see like an angry cat running a Jersey toll pike booth. Just because.
So a few AI trends here. This came out actually back in February, but Anthropic is always putting out some interesting stuff, and they put together something they call the Anthropic Economic Index, and it dives into what people are actually using AI for. So they're kind of taking this very high level view of what they see people using their product for, and kind of highlighting, okay, here's what people are actually using it for. Here's where they're finding value in it. And I think this is super helpful that they're sharing this data. And they
really
also wrote
cool.
a paper on it. That's linked in there also, the academic paper.
It's kind of like a predictor to the future of, economy and software folks can take a look at this and say, okay, here's where it's needed most, for example.
Yeah.
I like the debugging, if you look at the technical stuff that they're talking about, like, again, I don't know that I think, and I think we're going to get to this next, I don't know that I think AI should be building, things start to finish, but things like dealing with a SQL database, debugging things, like these things that are just, they waste so much time, but you have to do them if you don't have an intern. Yeah, it's good to see that at least people are putting it to the appropriate uses if they're going to be spending money on it.
Yeah. And overwhelming, if you get down to the AI usage by job type, computer and mathematical is only 3.4% of the workforce, but they make up 37.2% of the use of Claude. So it's this huge outlier there.
And I wonder how much of that has to do with capability versus brand awareness. So I think Claude kind of made a pretty big splash within the tech community.
Hmm.
So I think some of that may just be driven by awareness more than utility. But I also thought it was really interesting that the office and administrative support was pretty high as well. And that's the scary
Hmm.
part, right? Is like your admin is taking sensitive data and using something to munch through it. So
Yeah, I mean, they're generating email templates, responding to emails, and I'm pretty sure our next story explains the huge outlier of computer and mathematical, and that's they're using it to write code. So the next trend here is a quarter of startups in YC's current cohort have code bases that are almost entirely AI generated, and I kind of think this is a good thing because so I've worked for a lot of early stage startups, and a lot of the MVPs, a lot of the early versions of the products will not scale. You will get to that first customer with over 10,000 employees or 100,000 employees, and it just won't work. It just won't scale at that point. Or you won't find market fit and you'll end up pivoting and building something else. But regardless, I think I can't even guess at a percentage here, but I would guess it's a pretty high percentage of startups throw out a lot of their early code, if not entire early products. And if you can fail quicker, if you can throw that out with less labor, with burning less of
Yeah.
mhm.
your cash,
Well, and maybe
it
you
seems
won't
like
be
a
so
win to me.
attached to your code. Like, I think we've all worked in places where it's
Yeah.
technical founders and there's all these golden calves where you're like,
Mhm.
hey, like this won't scale. And they're like, yeah, but I
This is
wrote,
garbage. Throw it away.
yeah, you
But
pull it
Yeah.
out.
no, but
Yeah, like, and it's,
it's like their child,
especially
right?
yeah,
Yeah.
especially the
Overprotective.
OG code base. People get really personally attached because when you spend
Hmm.
hours writing this code, so hopefully, I guess maybe if people put less investment into it,
Yeah.
man hours, they'll feel less personally attached to it and more willing to update it because I've seen
And
that
less
problem
personally
numerous.
attacked
Yeah, yeah, right.
when told that they need to kill it.
Yeah, yeah. That's usually
Yeah.
well, and that's usually it. It's like because they're like, I literally spent days, months, years of my life writing this, like until something actually is broken, we're not changing it.
So, Eamon, I wanted to get your take on what number is this? This is number 8. The CISO is a business resilience architect. Did you get a chance to look at this one?
I read it. Yeah, I took a look. Honestly, I need to read it again because I was trying to understand what the author was going. Although I did, my eyes did come to the part where it says 24% of CISOs want to resign. I'm curious on your opinion though, because you found this. So, and then happy to chime in.
Yeah, so actually, my talk that I'm going to be giving at B-Side San Francisco is kind of on this topic. It's about shifting the mindset of being like a defender. Like I'm there to fight dragons to defend the network because the whole theme of B-Side San Francisco this year is like a Dungeons and Dragons type of thing. I don't know if it's Dungeons and Dragons. It's something in dragons. Beware
Mm.
dragons here, beware that kind of thing. And more to a survive the dragon. You're not there to slay the dragon. Like none of us are dragon slayers. Like none of us. Again, to your point, Jackie, like we don't have these skill sets. These are rare skill sets. That you can go up against an adversary and you're going to hunt them down and send legal after them and prosecute them and put them in jail. No, you're just there to make sure the business doesn't hurt too badly through the breach, right? You're there to survive. You're there to make sure you can recover, that the business can continue and move on and do what it needs to do to make the breach right with whoever got hurt by it and get on. And I think it is kind of a psychological shift that's necessary and results in us spending time and effort and money in the wrong places without that mindset.
Yeah, I do think it still kind of feels like we think only companies who fuck up or breached when that's definitely not the case, right? So I
Yeah.
don't yet know that we've gotten to the breaches will happen, and we look at them more like car accidents, right? It's not if, it's when. Like almost everybody's going to be in a car accident. To your point, the focus is on all of the different things you can put around that so that when the thing out of your control happens, you're not hurt. Um, yeah, so it's definitely a mentality shift, and I think there's always kind of been some shame in these breaches, and we still need to get away from, you know,
Yeah.
it's the
Shame and
security
blame,
team's fault. Yeah,
right?
shame and blame versus like this is a systemic issue where most companies are experiencing it. So let's accept that it's probably going to happen and focus more on the bubble wrap than the not ever dropping it in the first place.
So, what do you think, Eamon?
Yeah, I mean, I take a look at the article again, and then the author also linked to another article about the new the rethinking the CISO role. I mean, so we've been defenders, right? I mean, we've always been defenders. Maybe what's happened is that we've kind of been more black and white, and I think what the author is trying to say, I kind of gravitated again to this other part to be more of like the enterprise architect. And I spent a lot of my career in the architecture part, starting off as an analyst, engineer, and moving up. But um, I wonder, like, because I struggle because I believe CISOs should be more technical, right? And is the author saying, CISO should be more in the weeds and understand more about the technoscape? Is the idea that they haven't been connected? You know what I mean? And just sitting more at the top. So and he's wondering, is the role going to be fragmented or not? And it really depends who you have on your team. I've seen and also, I mean, we all know that we have to be backed up, right? It's always sometimes feels like it's an uphill battle. Oh, you don't have MDM on all of your laptops,
Yeah.
and you're handling financial customer information. Oh, yeah, that's how do I say this nicely, for you to
Yeah.
do this?
Well, I mean, it makes a good point that you like DORA isn't protecting from attacks, GDPR isn't protecting from attacks, AI safety isn't protecting from attacks, anti fraud isn't protecting from attacks. So like, there's all this stuff on the CISO's plate now, all these
Yeah,
responsibilities, that are more about business regulations, business compliance, like kind of cutting through all this stuff the business needs to do to get the paper it needs to operate legally, right? And yeah, it's just a you can't be just all about stopping the attack when you've got all that on your back. So
it
I
is.
did.
Yeah, I mean, I'm dealing with that. I deal with it all the time. SOC 2, but then oh, hey, listen, there's all these things, and I sit there. I'm like, should I bring this up? Is this a battle I want to battle right now? Um, but
Yeah,
if you have a well designed team, and I think this onus is on the CISOs, right? If you have good funding, let's assume you have some modicum of funding. Design your team in such a way that it's flexible, right? You have the compliance folks and you have the technical folks, but like let them talk to each other,
yeah,
right? And I've seen teams designed in such a way where people are very, very, very siloed and not and not only working on this one thing. That means you're going to have a really big team. But now you kind
yeah,
of need to have a more nimble team where, yes, the compliance person does need to. What about compliance engineer? Have you ever heard, like when I heard about a compliance engineer several years ago, I was like, wow, that's awesome. And I talked to a CISO that let go of their compliance, their project manager, and got an engineer instead that handled compliance. And it was like, oh, I mean,
yeah. A lot of it's just a kind of like a coding problem. Like I see
yeah,
people using AI to cut through all their vendor management, third party risk management stuff, questionnaires. Like
yeah.
there's just so much mind numbing manual, you know, paper shuffling.
And I think this goes to the whole fragment part that the article's talking about, but I think some of this is around like we've talked about this before, but what does the legal scope of a CISO look like? Because some of these things, to your point, are compliance, they're privacy related. And how is a CISO, do you set boundaries for yourself within the enterprise? And like this is not within our subject matter expertise. And I know nobody wants to lose their jobs, but just kind of thinking about how we empower CISOs to really own the things that should be under their control, because that also happens, right? CISOs don't have domain over everything, but also set really firm boundaries of this isn't our expertise, and having us handle this is actually probably going to introduce additional risk to the enterprise, where we could be using a service provider or something like that. So, I mean, I don't know if it's as much as is it going to fragment or converge, is like, how do we set boundaries? Because and I mean, I've worked in businesses where the CEO needs a boundary and needs to stop pushing code. But
yeah, exactly. I've been, early stage startups. There's a lot of that, but you can argue that it works because there's less boundaries there.
Yeah, right. And so there's a balance, right? And I think it's helping people figure out when that balance tips and how to advocate for yourself as a CISO.
All right. I think Eamon needs to head out. We need to let him go.
Thanks for having me. Talk to you soon.
Yeah.
Take care.
All right. And we didn't get to cover the stories he included.
That's all right. We committed to being shorter, and we're shorter this week. So if people are like, I just didn't see enough of your faces, they can let us know, and we'll run an hour next week.
So let's see. What do we got left here that we can cover? So the number 6 is interesting. Basically, a developer, and stories like this have popped up. What I wonder about this, so the headline is "Developer Convicted for Hacking Former Employer Systems," and like they took away some responsibilities from him. He felt slighted, got angry. A lot of times this is like a long-term employee that they're already kind of having problems with. Like that's why the responsibilities were reduced in the first place. And yeah, they get angry and they sabotage some systems. I've read through several situations like this. I wonder how many of them have happened. Like it happened with the city of San Francisco, I want to say, a while back. They had somebody who was holding some of the network infrastructure hostage there.
It's happened at companies I've worked at. I mean, I've contemplated going in and nuking some GitHub. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of people have had a lot of people have had the daydream, right?
Yeah.
But it's it's like we were talking in the first interview with Philip Wiley. The assumed breach is also the same as the angry admin, right? The angry admin situation where one of the embezzlement cases that I worked in my time as chief incident handler for some of the companies I've worked for, that was the guy who set up the payment system and was responsible for, like, if you escalated an issue with somebody getting payments or refund or something, he was the guy all that went to, which is why he got away with it for a while. So yeah, it's something we need to take into account. I feel like we don't focus on that as much because these aren't technically breaches. Mm-hmm. So often they're not reported. So I suspect this happens more often than we know because they're underreported.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're not required to, you usually don't report, right?
Yeah. Yeah, particularly with larger companies, they're just not going to do that.
You want to hit your squirrel story before we wrap up? I actually saw this video probably a handful of months ago, right? It's one of the things we always joke about. I think it's hilarious.
Yeah. Well, it's so funny that so the other thing we mentioned, the AI generated cats, that was also on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is just becoming like almost like any other social media. Like it's just full of memes and funny videos now. But
I love that, and I don't. Like, I feel like part of that is the changing demographic on LinkedIn in general, and that, younger people are coming onto LinkedIn who are more versed in internet culture, but it also seems that older people are doing it. So it's kind of becoming the last safe social media refuge where people don't get too partisan, and you kind of know there's not too many bots.
They are now.
Yeah, well, and that's... I love it and I hate it because I've noticed significantly more bot activity, like significant. Also, the paid promoted posts are getting out of hand. I posted about that yesterday. I'm
Yeah.
getting promoted all these posts that have nothing to do with me. I think just
Yeah.
because I talk
Same.
about random stuff on LinkedIn all the time. So their algorithm seems to be a little bit busted at the moment.
Yeah, so this well, I was just going to say I do blame Twitter somewhat because that was kind of where cybersecurity lived, and a
That's
lot of
true.
people, a lot IT also, and when it fragmented, and people went to Mastodon, they went to Blue Sky, they went to a bunch of Threads, to a bunch of other places. LinkedIn was one of those places, and so some people they just had LinkedIn and Twitter, and when they decided to quit Twitter, everything they wanted to post went on LinkedIn, right? So
Yeah.
that I think that's part of what happened there.
We're also in the age
Yeah.
of
So
the
that
influencer, so every company expects every person at the company to be an influencer. That's part of most companies' marketing campaigns is like, oh, all of our engineers are also going to be influencers. And so I think sometimes
so
people
the
are,
audience so far has no idea what we're looking at yet.
oh God, are you going to
So
share
the
it? Are you actually going to show it?
no, I'm not going to show it. The link is in the show notes. I mean, it's not like not safe for work because it is posted on LinkedIn and has not been reported or taken down. But it's would you get some questions if you watched it at work? You would
Yeah.
definitely get some questions. The post is titled maybe we do need more women in tech," and it's this AI generated, partially 3D generated, partially AI generated video of a
It's a birthing machine. So the
yeah. So
concept is to use centrifugal force to birth babies.
imagine the most unfriendly, cold clinical table a woman could give birth in a hospital, and now imagine that fused with a centrifuge.
It kind of looks like
So
the back of a Cybertruck. So there could be like a whole like cross marketing, like do donuts in your Cybertruck and have more babies thing.
so the idea is it's easier to give birth with some centrifugal force to toss the baby out, and there's a net to catch the baby. And clearly, that's not going to be good for the baby's neck or their not fully formed skull. Like it's just wild. Everybody's like, "This has got to be something someone just created for fun because it was hilarious." But at some point in the video, it shows the patent number. So,
Mhm.
of course, me being who I am, I went and looked up that patent number. Y'all, that's a real patent.
Yeah.
Somebody patented a a table that slings a baby out of a woman
Yeah. Well,
into a
it's
net.
interesting. It's not just a commentary on representation in tech, it's also representation in medicine, right? And I've
Yeah,
struggled with this myself. So I have pretty severe epilepsy. And it's so most medical researchers are men, most medical research subjects are men, unless it's a women specific drug. And I've had like most women who have epilepsy, they'll tell you at one particular week in their cycle, they have more seizures. But there's like this one specific kind of epilepsy that's associated with that. And elsewise, it's really hard to find a woman neurologist who understands the interaction between woman problems and epilepsy. And when you try to talk
Mhm.
to a male neurologist about it, they're like, oh, yeah, I think I've read some about that. So it's a really like, we need better women represent. So we need better women representation in all of these technical fields. We also need more men represented in women's field so that we don't have we need more men as teachers. We need more men as nurses. So I think you have to
Yeah.
solve it from both sides of the
Hassan
equation.
Hassan Minaj just had Halle Berry on, who has kind of a mission to get more studies done and more awareness of menopause and all the different phases of menopause, and a lot of it's just like not very well understood. Like half of the people on the planet are going to go through menopause, and there's so much we don't know about it.
I
So
thought you went childbearing to barren and that was it. And it turns out there's this like decade in between that you wash your sheets every day. You try not to kill people for no reason. Perimenopause is a bitch, y'all.
So, this U.S. patent number 3216423A, apparatus for facilitating the birth of a child by centrifugal force, was granted by the U.S. Patent Office in 1965. It expired in 1982, and its current status is expired. Nobody tried to keep it alive. Thank goodness. But it is somebody paid a patent lawyer to help them apply for a patent on this. And
I love that
George
somebody
Blonsky
went ahead and made the video for it just to put the cherry on top.
Even better, the inventors, George Blonsky and Charlotte Blonsky.
Well, maybe she was like, forceps, we don't want any more cone heads. So why don't you
Chances
just
they're
put me on
related?
the...
Chances this is a husband and wife?
Yeah. She's like, why don't you just put me on the trivet and just spin me around? I knew we weren't going to do 30 minutes.
Worth it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Worth it. All right. Thanks, Jackie, so much for joining me today. Big thanks to everyone for watching or listening to this week's episode of Enterprise Security Weekly. I mentioned I was up really late prepping for this, so I can't tell you exactly what we're going to talk about next week. I still need to dig into that, but we will have an episode next week, and we will see you then. Bye.